And Ann, we're hearing about the people voting late in Ohio causing at least some of the issues that we're discussing here tonight in terms of getting those votes counted. Is that what you're hearing?
Well, Randy, certainly. I mean, there were incredibly long lines in this state as Ohioans went out despite rainy weather, despite cold weather. They were absolutely determined to vote, and nowhere were they more determined to vote than in Knox County, where the last person voted at 3:55 this morning after standing in line for some 8 hours. It's really just been incredible. And because of those delays, I mean, the polls here closed at 7:30, but the state officials promised everybody who is in line would get a chance to vote. And that's some of what has held up these totals coming in. But now the key is, what is the margin of apparent victory, if you will, for President Bush, and what is the number of provisional ballots that are out there that are fueling the Kerry camp's hopes. With 99.9% of the precincts reporting, President Bush has a little more than 133,000 vote lead here in the state of Ohio. The question is, how many provisional ballots are there out there? Are there more? Are there enough? And are there enough for John Kerry that would flip that outcome? Well, the provisional ballots don't get counted until 10 days after the election, so that means on November 13th, they'll start to open them to see who those people voted for. So if they go through with this, it could be 10 more days before we know the outcome.
And I got to apologize for interrupting you, but White House spokesman Andy Card is about to give a statement, and we need to go to that. He is actually speaking right now. Let's listen in.
We won important victories, adding to our majority in the House and adding to our majority in the Senate. In Ohio, President Bush has a lead of at least 140,000 votes. The Secretary of State's office has informed us that this margin is statistically insurmountable, even after the provisional ballots are considered. So President Bush has won the state of Ohio. President Bush has also been declared the winner in Nevada. The other victories that he has had will be added with the strong showing of margins that we are looking at in Iowa and New Mexico, and we're also going to put those states in the winners column as well. This all adds up to a convincing Electoral College victory, as well as a strong endorsement of President Bush by his fellow Americans in the popular vote. President Bush decided to give Senator Kerry the respect of more time to reflect on the results of this election. The President will be making a statement later today. Again, I thank all of you who stayed up these many hours waiting for the opportunity to celebrate this victory. And I also thank all of the volunteers all across this great country that work so hard. But most importantly, I thank the many voters who participated in this important election. It was a great celebration of our democracy. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.
White House Chief of Staff Andy Card there making a statement to Bush supporters, confirming by White House standards that President Bush has won the state of Ohio with its 20 electoral votes. Bush won Ohio back in 2000. No Republican has ever won the White House without winning Ohio.
And of course, still hanging in the balance right now, one of 6 states is the state of Iowa. We head out to Des Moines and Natalie Allen, where Natalie, I understand they are still feverishly counting those votes at this hour.
Working through the morning, that's right, Amy. There are 4 counties that are still working this morning and counting ballots. Right now, as far as the vote totals go, the president, George Bush, is ahead by just over 15,000 votes. But here are the problems, and there are significant ballots that haven't been turned in yet. 2 counties had their counting machines break down on them, and those counties could represent up to 15,000 votes. One of the counties is back up and counting. The second county expects to have a new counting machine delivered by the manufacturer this morning, and they expect to be counting again by 8 o'clock this morning. The other issue that is held at the state of Iowa are absentee ballots. Some 2 counties are still counting their ballots. I just talked with someone from Lee County. They said the issue there is 4 ballots that are being challenged by Republican observers. These observers flew in this morning. There are some issues regarding these few ballots. The absentee board is making a determination about them, and when they conclude, they will count them up and send them in. So those are the 4 counties that are still working hard this morning. There's still the question of possible other absentee ballots that came in at the last minute, and also provisional ballots here in Iowa as well. Maybe up to 12,000 provisional ballots. They weren't expected to begin counting those until Thursday. So that's why there's still some lights on here in Iowa and people wondering what the answer will be here. Back to you, Amy.
All right, Natalie Allen, burning the, well, now it's the almost 6 o'clock hour, the oil
Can't say
there.
midnight
the
oil
midnight
anymore.
oil, right. Natalie Allen in Des Moines, thank you so much.
All right, coming up after the break right here on MSNBC's live coverage of the vote 2004 from Democracy Plaza, we're going to take a look at what inspired people to vote. What inspired so many people to go to the polls? We're going to have some exit poll information from MSNBC's Allison Stewart. That's coming up right after the break. You're watching MSNBC's live coverage from Democracy Plaza in the heart of New York.
Welcome back to Democracy Plaza on this day after the election. Still much hangs in the balance. 6 states specifically right now where there's just too close to call. Some of them with 99% of the precincts reporting, but still so many absentee ballots and provisional votes to count.
One of those is the state of Ohio. We're wondering, as you probably are, what inspired people to go to the polls? What inspired them to vote the way they did? MSNBC's Allison Stewart has been looking at some of that exit poll information. She joins us now with the details on that. Allison?
Thanks so much, Randy. Amy, here in the tracking center, we're looking at how the 2 candidates did fare in Ohio, a state that actually struggled economically during the Bush years. 16% of its manufacturing jobs been lost since March of 2001. Let's look at those polls. Our NBC exit poll in Ohio finds voters with a high level of unhappiness regarding the state's economy. When asked to rate economic conditions in their state, nearly 6 in 10 said not good, while 4 in 10 take a positive view. Ohio voters were also asked if they trusted the presidential candidates to deal with the economy. 51% of the voters said they trust President Bush to handle the economy. Usually incumbents receive more blame for economic problems. As for the voters themselves, white evangelicals were 25% of the voters in Ohio. 3/4 of them voted for President Bush. So the economy and religious values playing a big role in Ohio. I mean, Randy and Amy.
I'll be Andy at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me.
And Allison, something we were talking about back in our workroom, that this was actually pretty significant because we had all here in the media been talking about the war on terror, the war in Iraq, security moms. We really weren't talking about perhaps morality moms, and certainly moral values did play a huge role this time around.
No.
Allison, I'm wondering if Allison can even hear us. She may not be able to hear us.
Now, okay, one of the other things that was interesting to those who watched these election results come in and those who actually visited the polls was the lack of the youth vote. Remember the 29 to 18 age group, the get out the vote? Apparently the percentage of those voting, 17%, mirrors the 17% in 2000. So that attempt to get more young people to vote, at least in this election, did not come to fruition.
Right now at this hour, though, as we mentioned, there are still 6 states in play, too close to call. At least, I think they're now down to 5 because we did call Michigan just a few moments ago. There's a look at those states that are still in play at this hour: Nevada, New Mexico, Iowa, New Hampshire, all still in play at this hour.
And here's where it gets interesting. Nevada and New Mexico and Iowa are all, at least at this point in the morning, in the Bush category. Some 10,000 to 12,000 votes separating him in New Mexico, about 15,000 votes separating him from John Kerry in Iowa, and Nevada, much the same story. He needs to take one of those to push him over the 269, which he has right now, to broach the 270 magical Electoral College number.
I also did leave out the state of Wisconsin, which is leaning Kerry at this
Shame
hour
on
as
you.
well. I knew you'd be upset about that. Let's take a look at the electoral vote totals at this hour as we know it. There is the president with 269. Of course, he needs that magic 270. John Kerry at this hour with 238 electoral votes.
All right, let's talk to a couple of people back here this
We
morning.
have a few people who have amazingly
It is early. Can you follow us, guys?
stayed with us here throughout the night.
All right, Ohio still believes from the Kerry Edwards camp that it is in play. You're here, still supporting your candidate. What are you thinking right now? Do you think that it's a realistic approach to think that John Kerry can still win this election?
Yes, I do.
And why?
Because we've been out here this long and it keeps getting better and better.
Yeah,
You're
let me ask,
truly optimistic.
why have you been out here and what have you seen? What has it been like? What has this experience been like for you out here in Democracy Plaza?
Look, I'm right here because I support Kerry 100%. And I hope he be the next president of the United States. I really love the guy. I think he wants to do something for America. I see him when he was young, standing up in front of a president, in front of the whole world against the war in Vietnam. And I believe that this man could be a better commander-in-chief.
Let me ask you.
I hope he wins.
What is your first name? Leslie, if John Kerry does not win this election, are Democrats willing to bring this nation together? We've been apart. We've been a divided nation for many months now over this election. Are Democrats willing to come together, realize that we have 4 more years of President Bush, if in fact that's the way it turns out, and bring this country together?
I can't speak for everybody, but hopefully, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but God help us.
Can you speak for yourself on that front?
God help us if he does win and Kerry does.
Is that a no? You don't believe you can rectify some of the divide that has separated this nation?
I don't think so.
Now, you all have been out here all night, correct? So, and I want to ask you, because earlier we saw quite a bit of rivalry going on. What was that like? I saw a lot of Bush supporters out here earlier. You all obviously have stuck it out a little bit later. But tell me what that was like.
I think some people on both sides are a little more vociferous and a little more emotional, and at that moment tempers were raised, people were tired, they'd been here all night, but it seems to have calmed down, and I think the people here we're having some good communication between both sides and sharing some ideas, and that's what this is supposed to be about.
What about the Democratic Party in general? One quick question. The Democratic Party, if they do not win this election, has some healing to do. The Democratic Party needs to come together on some fronts, on some issues. What do you believe the Democratic Party needs to do in this country right now to bring its forces together, to bring its people together in the next election, if that's possible?
Well, I think that too, we need to revisit our ideas of morality. That seems to be the great divide within the Democratic Party. So some more conversation there, more conversation about tolerance within the party. It's most disheartening to see what is happening in the South, which I definitely felt morality was one of the divisive issues and why we lost some of those states.
All right. Well, thank you very much for
How
your
long
thoughts.
do you guys plan on staying out here? I have to ask you that.
As long as it takes.
As long as
Until we get some
All right.
We can probably help you out with that. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it. We want to recap, of course, what we know at this hour. As we mentioned, 5 states now, still too close to call at this hour. We can go through those states for you. We can let everyone know exactly what we're looking at as we go into the morning hours here. Too close to call, Iowa with 99% in right now. The vote difference just over 15,000. The president with the edge on that one.
And also, too close to call in the state of, I'm going to guess here and say Nevada. Too close to call there. About 10,000 votes separating them in Nevada. Also in New Mexico. You mentioned Iowa. We've got New Hampshire still in play and Wisconsin.
So we are going to hand things over to Imus in the morning. They're going to take over after we get to this break.
Yeah, it's going to come up pretty quick here. But the one thing we want to talk about from Democracy Plaza throughout the morning here is the counting of these final votes. Again, the state of Ohio is the one to watch. If the Democratic Party concedes there and one more state comes into play for President Bush will exceed that 270 electoral vote total, which would then give him the White House back.
And just to recap here, what you're looking at as well as we look at the national totals, Bush with 51% of the vote, Kerry with 49%. And again, Bush with 269 electoral votes, just one vote away from the presidency, one electoral vote away from the presidency.
And there are the raw numbers right there. If you want to look at how many people are involved in this election there, you're going to about, looks like about 111 million or so people so far have voted in this election, 51 to 48%. Some 3.5 million votes separating the two of those with 98% in.
With 98%, and that's right, of course, but the electoral vote number 270 that the president needs to take over at least one of the three states he's leading in right now, Nevada, New Mexico, and Iowa. We have a really high percentage of the precincts reporting, but again, those election workers trying to count those absentee and provisional ballots.
I want to thank you for joining us. Our coverage is not over, but in the meantime, we're going to hand it over to Imus and the gang. They'll pick up our coverage. We'll be back at about a little before 10 o'clock this morning with more from Democracy Plaza.
Once again from Democracy Plaza, decision 2004, all of that with the election of the President of the United States still at this late juncture not a done deal. And joined once again graciously by the Iron Lady, for crying out loud, Amy Rohrbach. And here is what we know. At this hour this morning, the President is expected to declare re-election victory, even though Senator Kerry refuses to concede battleground Ohio or the presidency. NBC News has projected that President Bush will pick up the 20 electoral votes Ohio has to offer. But Senator Kerry's running mate, Senator John Edwards, says they will fight for every vote. Good morning, I-Man.
How are you?
How are you, sir?
I just ran into Brokaw on the street over here. He's staggering down the street with a cup of coffee. And I said, how's it going? He said, what a nightmare. That's exactly what he said.
Did he really?
Yeah. He'll be on with us later, but...
Great.
Well, you make it sound like the Senator Kerry should concede.
What do you mean I make it sound like he should concede?
That's kind of the way it sounded to me. We're not conceding anything. We're going to count every vote.
Moron. By the way, moron.
No.
What did I try to tell you?
What?
3 days ago, at least 3 days ago.
What?
Don't put yourself in this position.
No, it's not over.
To have to be humiliated.
No, it's not over. Is it over, Amy?
No,
It's not over yet.
It's not. Thank you.
It's not until President Bush gets 270.
Ohio is being contested right now because of tens of thousands of uncounted provisional ballots, which the I-Man says we are going to count every ballot, and we should.
Yes.
We have until November the 13th to do that.
We have forever to count them until they're counted.
In addition to Ohio, results are too close to call in Wisconsin, which has 10 electoral votes. Iowa, 7, New Mexico and Nevada each having 5. President Bush took Florida with relative ease this time around. He's projected to pick up 27 electoral votes from the state, where a 36-day recount and Supreme Court ruling put him in office in 2000. It looks as though that is not going to be necessary this time around. And it looks like all of the time that Senator Kerry spent campaigning in Pennsylvania did pay off. Kerry, the projected winner there, picking up 21 electoral votes. Right now, as NBC calls it, President Bush has 269 projected electoral votes to Senator Kerry's 221, 270, of course, necessary to claim victory, which is just a matter of course.
You know, I watched NBC all night and MSNBC.
Yeah.
And, but I got curious as to what Rather was doing.
As did I.
So I switched over to see what that psychopath was saying. And they still haven't called Ohio, right?
No.
Oh,
Last I checked, they hadn't.
Oh, okay. So they haven't called Ohio. And he's not cheerleading like he was in 2000.
No, but I did see him say, well, now, wait a minute. Let's not rush into anything. This is as thin as November ice. I did see that.
It's like a wet dog in the road. Oh, God. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So anyway.
All right, we're going to take a look now at some of the key Senate races. Democratic leader Tom Daschle is struggling for political survival in South Dakota against Republican John Thune. The race right now is still too close to call. In North Carolina, the seat formerly held by Senator John Edwards is now in the hands of the GOP. Republican Richard Burr defeated Democrat Erskine Bowles. Democrat Barack Obama easily defeated Republican Alan Keyes in Illinois to become the only African American in the Senate class of 2005 and only the 5th African American senator in U.S. history. And in Pennsylvania, incumbent Republican Senator Arlen Specter won re-election. He is now in line to chair the Judiciary Committee and preside over any Supreme Court nominations that reach the Senate in the next 2 years. As of now, NBC News is projecting a new Senate composition of 50 Republicans, 44 Democrats, and 1 independent. 5 races right now, still too close to call.
And on the House side, the Republicans' decade-long hold on the House of Representatives has been extended another 2 years. In Texas, Democratic Congressman Chet Edwards was reelected, making him the only survivor of 5 House Democrats targeted by redistricting. In Texas, in Kentucky's 4th district, Republicans had high hopes for the open Democratic seat there. They got it, beating out Nick Clooney, father of actor George Clooney. And in Illinois, the longest-serving Republican House member, Phil Crane of Illinois, defeated. Crane had served in the House since 1969. So as of now, House side, NBC News projecting that the 435 seats in the House will break down 231 Republicans, 203 Democrats, 1 independent. And it'll be the first time since the early 30s that Republicans will have control of the House for a 12-year period. So that is the way that's the way things stand at the moment. Aides are saying that President Bush will declare re-election victory this morning, even though John Kerry refuses to concede battleground Ohio or the presidency.
Well, let me ask you both a couple of questions. First of all, how many states are left to be declared?
5.
And they are?
They are Wisconsin, they are New Mexico, we have Nevada still up for grabs, New Hampshire,
Iowa.
And Iowa. Exactly.
What's the spread in New Mexico? The total vote spread?
They're all within a 10, 30,000. I think New Mexico's 10,000, 11,000 right now in favor of Bush.
Oh, okay, because when I went to bed at 3:30 this morning, it was 2,000 in New Mexico. But
it's gone up and down a little bit, and we heard
Okay.
from Governor Bill Richardson. He still believes that it's within Kerry's reach. He believes a lot of the ballots that have yet to be counted are going to go in his favor, but
He needs to have another burrito because he's having a sugar problem. I love the governor, and he's a very good friend of mine, but he's delusional.
he's been up all night.
Yes, he has. Oh, well, okay. Now, what's the vote spread in Ohio? The total vote spread.
I believe it's somewhere around 140,000 at last check in Bush's favor.
Okay, is 100% of the vote in?
It's 99% or so.
How many provisional ballots are there out?
Depends who you're listening to. I've heard from 130-odd thousand to 175,000, which seems to be the generally accepted
And
amount.
according to what we heard from Andy Card just a few moments ago, he says that the Attorney General of Ohio says that it's basically statistically insurmountable for Kerry to...
we'll decide that later, Amy.
Right.
Let's not rush.
Although,
I'm just letting you know.
there was one.
letting you know what they
We're
said.
keeping hope alive.
There was a Democrat assessment that there were up to 250,000, but people were saying, where did they get that? Did
No,
they
there's not that
just
many.
pluck that out of the
All right.
air, or what?
And, what is in past elections? What percentage of the provisional ballots in Ohio have been declared, been authenticated, or
It's
declared
like
eligible?
Isn't it like...
I honestly don't know.
I had heard something, and I could be off base here, but like something as little as 11 or 12%.
Okay. Well, I heard that the Secretary of State of Ohio said 90% in the last election.
Really?
Yeah. Now, Rudolph Giuliani was on a very contentious interview with Tom Brokaw at around 2:30 this morning, in which Tom was not interested in hearing any spin. And Rudy said it was 8 to 10, but Tom and Tim quickly pointed out that the Secretary of State or whomever in Ohio had said that in the last election it was 90%. Do you know any of this stuff? What did you do last night? Go to Larry Flint's
I
Hustler
snorted
Club?
some heroin. What do you think? I watched
Well,
it.
no, I don't know what you did. Hey, by the way, this is the first time I've ever stayed up all night without doing cocaine. This is pretty good, isn't it? Or taking some other kind of drug.
Congratulations.
That's good, isn't it?
Did Tom sign
I'm
off
impressed.
at about 5:40? Tom Brokaw signed off for the last time, covering an election. We didn't know if you were going to make it in here because of your past performance blubbering when Robin McNeil retired.
We were glad that was a moment
I'll
that
tell you,
perhaps
Tom-
you missed.
Brokaw is an extraordinary individual. I mean, he's going to be out later, and I wouldn't embarrass him, but he's one of the greatest newsmen in the history of this business, the greatest anchor ever in my lifetime. Far greater than Cronkite or anybody else. But even better than that, he's a better person. He's a great person. He's a great American. He's a decent human being.
Here we go. Here we get the Kleenex. Get the Kleenex.
I know. I have
No,
some.
because Peter Jennings is a phony. Dan Rather's disgraceful, and half the rest of them are. Lair's okay, but he's just misguided. But the rest of them. But no, Brokaw's a great guy.
It was a very melancholy moment.
Yeah, it was.
As was over at CBS News, but for a different reason.
Did you see it? Did you see him saying goodbye from?
Oh, I was talking to him on the street.
No. Did you see him on the air?
No.
Say his goodbye.
Oh, thank God.
I was doing my hair.
Oh.
How's it look?
Which, by the way, it's pretty fluffy this morning.
Yeah, 9 minutes after the hour. Amy Robach. And we've been mispronouncing your name.
But you just said it right there.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, all right, good. Robach and Charles McCord, and we'll all be back here in a little bit, and we'll talk to as many people as we can. Craig Crawford is not going to be on because CBS, which is a dreadful organization, and probably has members of Al Qaeda on the board of directors over there. They won't let him.
I thought it's going to look like Jonestown over there at CBS News later today. Before it's all over.
But Jay Severin will be on. Pat Buchanan, Chris Matthews, Howard Feynman, Tim Russert, Tom Brokaw, Barnacle, Andrea Mitchell, and then we'll try to talk to some of these reporters around the country and find out what the hell is going on. But as of yet, well, I don't think Senator Kerry should concede. I mean, he's going to lose the election, I understand that. I would like to point out that I did tell Time Magazine that it's in print that Bush was going to win, didn't I?
You did?
Didn't I? Thanks, Amy. Didn't I?
Didn't
I? Just say yes or no.
Can we have this? Can we go over the conversation that you and I had last night?
No. 10 minutes after the hour.
Brothers, give me a groove. So look to your left and to your right. If it's somebody you don't know, maybe it's time to introduce yourself, or maybe say, I'm us in the morning.
Morning program on the radio all over the country and on MSNBC. We're at Democracy Plaza, where NBC News and MSNBC has been on all night. In fact, I mentioned when a few minutes ago I was coming down 49th Street, and there's Brokaw staggering down the street with a cup of coffee, and I rolled the window down and talked to him for a second. And his comment was, "What a nightmare." Well, I watched them all, Pat Buchanan and all of them, until about 3:30 in the morning. So Mr. Buchanan is here. We're going to talk to him in just a second. He hadn't been asleep yet. And Jay Severin's down from Boston. There's two people who are really happy this morning, probably. George Bush and Hillary Clinton.
Boy, no kidding. I was thinking of that. Senator Clinton has got to be elated.
Oh, well, I mean, they're just thrilled to death.
Sure.
Anyway, bring me up to speed where we are, and then we'll talk to Jay and Pat.
Still not a done deal, I-Man. NBC News has projected that President Bush will pick up the 20 electoral votes in Ohio, but Senator Kerry's running mate, John Edwards, says they will fight for every vote. We were figuring around 175,000 provisional ballots remain out, and they have until November the 13th, I believe, to count all of those. And they say that they, want to make it
Well, they first have to authenticate them, don't they, determine if they're eligible voters? And
True. I mean, the process has until November 13th if they needed that. In addition to Ohio, results are too close to call in Wisconsin with 10 electoral votes. Iowa, 7. New Mexico and Nevada each have 5. And the president took Florida relatively easily this time around, 27 electoral votes. And it looks like all of the time that the senator spent campaigning in Pennsylvania paid off because he did win that state, picked up 21 electoral votes. So as NBC sees it, the president has 269 projected electoral votes. Senator Kerry's 221 with 270.
how many other networks awarded Ohio to the president? I know CBS didn't, but they never would.
Well, the outcome is still in, I mean...
Well, now, how many other networks
awarded it?
Yeah, as did NBC. Did ABC?
I don't believe so. CNN did not, no.
Fox must have.
Must have, but I don't know the answer to that.
Can you find out?
Oh, sure.
Okay, what else?
Absolutely. That's about it. Ohio proving to be the most contentious state in the race. The top election official says the final count might not be concluded for a couple of weeks.
What is the popular vote spread?
The popular vote is still in the 51-48. 51 Bush, 48 Senator Kerry.
Percentage points.
Yes.
And what was like 55 million for Bush, 52 for...
something on that order.
3.5 million. There it is on screen.
It's okay on the screen. 58 million, 8,304. 54,457,318 for Kerry.
So we can't even say this time we won the popular vote, can we?
No.
This is really a nightmare. Well,
No, I'm out.
You know, before we go to Pat and J7, let's talk to Ann Thompson, who is in Ohio. And it's not the first time Ann's been up all night, but probably under these circumstances. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Don.
How are you?
You have an unfair advantage. I have been up all night.
Yeah, well, I've been watching all night, so. What's the latest from? What is the latest from Ohio?
Okay, here's the latest. The margin between President Bush and Senator Kerry is 134,000 votes.
Right.
The number of provisional ballots that were cast in Ohio in 78 of the 88 counties is 135,000 votes. And so we've still got 10 counties to report how many provisional ballots were counted there.
Right.
And so right now, it looks like there are more provisional ballots than the margin of apparent victory for President Bush.
Okay, in the last election, what percentage of provisional ballots in Ohio were declared eligible?
90%.
Wow. So did they expect that to hold this time?
Well, a couple of things. Ohio, first of all, has had provisional ballots for a decade.
No.
Two, the other thing that has changed is in 2000, there were fewer people who were actually eligible for provisional ballots. With the passage of a federal law called Help America Vote Act, more people became eligible to use provisional ballots in this election. So it's hard to say that they'll have that same kind of certification rate that they did in 2000.
And the Kerry people now, they think that they're, because you just said that there are more provisional ballots than the vote spread between the two candidates, and so their hopes rest on all of the provisional ballots being declared eligible, and then all of them being for Senator Kerry. Is that their plan?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Don. They need most of those provisional ballots declared eligible, and then to win an incredible majority there. But the other thing that gets counted are overseas absentee ballots as well, and those are mainly military ballots, and a lot of people think those ballots would go for President Bush.
How long do you have to work? You've been up all night. I mean, how long do they expect you to do this?
Oh, we'll do it until there's a break in the story.
I don't know if my old dealer is still in business in Cleveland, but I could try to get in touch with him for you. Thanks, Ann. Ann Thompson. NBC
You're always
News.
looking out for me.
Yes, I am.
Should you be pushing narcotics?
I didn't say that. I just said I can give her some help to stay awake and feel good about everything. 23 after the hour. Please welcome to the program now Pat Buchanan and Jay Severin. How are you? How are you guys? Thank you both for doing this. Pat, I'll start with you. I know you've been up all night.
Right.
Tell me where you think we are.
Oh, I think that the you pointed out the provisional ballots. It looks virtually impossible for Kerry to get Ohio, I think, and the president's going to win either Iowa or New Mexico or Nevada. One of those three will put him over the top. Frankly, he hasn't won the presidency yet, even with Ohio. He's 269. I think he's going to win one of those states, even though NBC won't call it or the other people won't call it. And so when that happens, I think Kerry is going to be under extraordinary pressure, I think, to virtually concede. I don't know how they would go about not conceding and saying we're going to wait for 10 days, but maybe they're going to do it. They're going to be under pressure from both sides, tremendous moral pressure that the Bush administration will put them under. And on the other hand, the NAACP and Jesse Jackson and these folks are going to be saying, don't you give up and don't you wimp out. There's still a chance here. And you're going to have people descending on Ohio, I think, and saying that, people were disenfranchised here. They weren't allowed to vote here. I think you could have Florida all over again, but the president's got such a 3.5 million vote majority that they're not on the kind of strong ground that Al Gore was.
And it's not a 500 vote difference
Exactly.
in Ohio. It's 140,000, whatever it is.
Right.
Well, I voted for Senator Kerry, and I want him to win, but I mean, he's not going to win. They're being crazy.
You're out to 10 grand you were talking about
Well,
yesterday.
that's fine. Well, this side's willing to bet $1 million. I couldn't get anybody to take my money. So, but it doesn't seem realistic to me that they one. I mean, I heard Giuliani tell Brokaw that in his experience, provisional ballots, about 8 to 10% of them were declared eligible.
I heard that in Illinois, 10 to 20%. Yep. I had never heard a number like she said 90% in Ohio.
Well, I heard the Secretary of State of Ohio, and she said, and they were reporting last night on NBC, that in the last election, in the 2000 election, 90% of the provisional ballots had been declared eligible. So.
Yeah, but you know very well that Kerry's not going to get all those ballots. And,
no, of course
not. If they go through the process. He could be hurt badly if he goes through the process and then loses it all, I think.
Yeah. But he shouldn't concede.
Not until you go over the top and then take a look at Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess they're going to make a decision this morning around 10 o'clock. That was the last I heard the Kerry people. So.
I say one of the interesting things here is that the pressure on anyone, and by anyone I mean Hillary Rodham Clinton, the pressure on any Democrat who plans to run in 2008 to fight this thing, to say to Kerry publicly, you fight this thing, because if they alienate themselves now from the core of the Democrat Party, the last thing you want to be if you're an 2008 candidate is the Democrat who stands up and says to Kerry, concede quickly. Because the NAACP and the unions, they'll kill you. And you need them in 2008. So there's going to be tremendous pressure, cross-pressures.
Edwards helped himself last night when he went out there and was defiant right in the teeth. I'll bet every Democrat or most every partisan Democrat in the country said, thank goodness these guys are going to fight.
Well, they should. They should at least count all the votes. I mean, I don't have any problem with that. Do you, Jay? Or?
No, not at all. Look, the one thing, though, I would like to make an important public service announcement. Anyone holding tickets to the Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, P. Diddy, Barbara Streisand, Christy Brinkley concert on the White House lawn, it's been postponed.
You're such a horrible human being. Oh, my God. 27 after the hour. We're talking with the dreadful Jay Severin and our old friend Pat Buchanan. And, I was trying to help you. That's over. That's,
My manager.
More with Pat and Jay coming up at 27 minutes after the hour. Still hadn't been decided, and as soon as it is, why, obviously, we'll probably tell you about it.
We've waited 4 years for this victory. We can wait one more night.
Ross in the morning.
Minutes after the hour here in the Emerson Morning Program on the radio all over the country and on MSNBC. And you've turned your radio on there somewhere in the country or whatever. It's still not decided yet. And Ohio's in the Kerry camp estimation is still up in the air, although NBC awarded Ohio to the president around 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, I forget exactly when it was. I wonder if they regret doing that. Do you know, Pat?
I don't think they regret doing it, but I noticed this morning we're not going to declare any other state for the president, because apparently that would put him over the top. And I found that odd, frankly, because some of these states look to me, under normal conditions, they would be declared if it weren't for what happened in Florida. So I don't understand that, frankly.
David Gregory's at the White House, and I watched him all night, and he seemed to make it through the night better than Ann Thompson did, but who knows? Anyway, good morning, David.
Good morning, I'm in.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. I think we're all a little tired, but another amazing night.
What are they saying around the White House?
Well, within the past couple of hours, the president joined his top advisors in the old family dining room of the residence and finally looked around and said, okay, what are we going to do here? Because all night long, after we made the projection that he had won Ohio, they felt that the race was basically going to go for them. They felt good about New Mexico and Nevada as two states that they were looking at in particular. They were waiting for the networks to make the call, and then concession or no concession from Kerry, he was prepared to declare victory. And then absent that projection from us, they were frankly disappointed that we didn't do that. They were eager for it to be done, felt it should be done. But absent that, they decided to go to bed, let it rest for a few hours, and then they'll consider their options. I mean, I think their plan now, still with or without a concession from Kerry, once they get one more state, is to go ahead and assert victory. Their feeling, and you got into this with Ann and the others, again, their feeling in Ohio is that there's simply no way for Kerry to erase the margin. I was walking out to my car with a senior Bush official who said, we think our total is going to be even higher in Ohio. It's going to maybe get up to about 150, 60, 70,000. And one of the reasons is because they were getting late precincts from the southwestern part of the state, big Republican counties near Cincinnati, who will break something like 70-30 for Bush. And so they think they'll be able to run up their total there.
Why were you walking out to your car with a senior Bush official? What for?
I don't have the strength to reach to the phone and choke you.
No, but I mean, why were you going out to the car?
No, I was leaving. I'm going home to get a few hours sleep, and so is this official. So is this official. Finally, they're going to get back there at 9 o'clock to have a senior staff meeting to figure out what they want to do. Now, in the meantime, they dispatched Andy Card, the chief of staff, to go over to the Reagan building where supporters were waiting all night and sleeping on the floor to read a statement that essentially declared victory for the president.
How late did the president actually stay up?
Well, my understanding is that they made this decision that he was not going to go speak just after 5 a.m. So he pulled an all-nighter.
Like, this is the first time I've ever stayed up all night without doing drugs.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's true with him too. Probably, huh? Could you find that out, you think?
There is nothing that's right about you. As Lynn Cheney would say, you are not a good man.
Go get some rest, Dave.
Okay.
Thank you very much, David Gregory, White House correspondent for NBC News. I think that's a legitimate question, don't you?
Yes, it is.
I mean, how do you stay?
Certainly. Should be asked.
Yeah. Anyway, Pat Buchanan's here. Why did Bush win? He obviously has won. So.
I think one reason he won is, frankly, what they call the moral values issues. You noticed he did very badly in Pennsylvania, far worse than you would imagine for 44 visits. And they had the gay marriage on the ballot in both Ohio and Michigan, where the president ran surprisingly close, even though he hadn't worked well. I think that helped. And they had that on any number of ballots. I think the president campaigned like nobody ever has. I think he did a smart thing, even though he didn't win, or he doesn't look like he's going to win those upper Midwestern states, so Wisconsin and Minnesota. He put Kerry on the defensive, forced him back to go do those states. Ultimately, I'll tell you, I think what won for him is the demonization of Kerry by the swift boat vets and the Republican convention destroyed Kerry as an alternative, and he redeemed himself and counteracted about $100 million in negative ads in that first debate, but didn't quite do it. The election was two elections, basically. One, a referendum on Bush, which the Democrats had won, the country was prepared to change, and secondly, a referendum whether Kerry was the guy for the job, and he never closed the sale.
Also, can I say, I think two major tactical things very briefly, one a plus and one a minus. The plus was, in the end, the majority of voters, Brian Williams earlier this evening, or yesterday, whenever it was, said 52% of voters believed that the war in Iraq equaled the war on terror. That was a linkage that Bush had to have, because I think the war was hurting him. And the other thing was, some youth vote, huh? I mean, who would have thought vote or die, that so many people would choose die? I mean, they were home hitting the bongs. They weren't at the voting booth. So, I mean, that was something every year that I've been in the business, people say this is the year that the inner city and that the young people are going to vote. And as it turns out, this wasn't the year.
A highlight of my convention watching experience was Campbell Brown interviewing P. Diddy at about 2 o'clock this morning. Well, even though they're contesting this now, sort of, it really isn't going to be close. I mean, when it finally shakes out, the popular vote, the president's ahead by
3.5 million.
3.5 million votes. He's probably going to wind up with close to 280 electoral votes. So
I would not sell short, though, that Ohio is the brass ring here. And right about now, the plane is landing with Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton in the NAACP, quite seriously, to stage a wailing and gnashing of teeth and cries of disenfranchisement and racism and intimidation at the polls. Watch magically.
Evidence is there of that?
Well, 1 million black votes were disenfranchised in Florida after a presidential commission and investigations. Not a single person was produced. Watch magically as provisional ballots start to appear out of thin air in Ohio. That's the worry right now. They have to stage something to contest Ohio if they're going to fight it.
Yeah, and if the president loses Ohio, I don't think he's going to lose it at all. I think it's out of the question. But if he did lose it, he loses the election. It's Kerry.
All right.
Despite the fact he lost by 3.5 million votes.
But in spite of these predicted protests you're talking about, which I can't see how they can materialize if it were a lot closer in the overall vote.
Well, again, but it won't, as Pat says, it won't matter. The president could still lose and win by 3 million votes.
Kerry's got to, at some point, pull a Nixon in 1960 and say, enough.
For the
country. If you bring Jesse Jackson, all that rigmarole out there, Kerry would just damage himself. I think he ought to take a good, cold, hard look at how many provisional votes, what the votes coming in from overseas. Is there any realistic possibility? If there isn't, just I would think he ought to concede and say, okay, do the counting, but I'll concede now.
Pat, I want to thank you very much for. I know you're dead tired.
Well, it's a delight. Doing it.
It was gracious of you to come and do this, and thank you very much. And get some rest, and if you are around, come back. So.
Well, we'll do. Thanks.
Pat Buchanan here on the
Be back here about 8:45.
And Jay, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Jay Severin here on the Amherst Morning Program. Jay's on 86.9 FM Talk in Boston, soon to be on all over the country, and he's become a fave, at least for me and Bernie, and Chuck's not all that fond of him, but I am. We'll talk to Brian Williams coming up. It's 19 minutes now till the hour. We're on MSNBC here from Democracy Plaza, also on the radio all over the country, 19 till the hour.
To your moms, I came to drop bombs. I got more rhymes than the Bible's got psalms. And just like the prodigal son, I've returned. Anyone stepping on me, you'll get burned. Cause I got lyrics, but you ain't got none. If you come to battle, bring a shotgun. Amos in the morning.
13 minutes till the hour here in the ABC Morning program on the radio all over the country and on MSNBC. We're live this morning from Democracy Plaza, and to bring us up to speed on everything that's going on in the world, the man who will take over the anchor chair for NBC News on December 2nd, and he's been up all night. It's occurred to me that talking to these reporters who've been up all night is like being in a bar, walking in a bar at 4 in the morning. They've all been there and they're drunk, and you're not. And so they're slurring their words, and but Brian looks pretty good. Anyway, please welcome Brian Williams. Good morning, Mr. Williams.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Imus.
How are you?
I'm all right, thanks.
So where are we?
I was going to say the only difference is most of the guys you meet in a bar make sense. We are at gut check time just about for Mr. Kerry. We have a lot of House races that the night went so quickly that we haven't even caught up with and taken stock of. We've got apparently Tom Daschle out of work, which is one the Republicans wanted badly.
That is great news.
And we've got the most split nation. I mean, the paint has dried now in this kind of 48-48 thing. And boy, what a task in front of the apparently reelected President Bush.
Well, I can't imagine though that there'll be, because I voted for Senator Kerry, and if he loses, I lose money over this. So I have a vested interest in all this. But I can't imagine that there would be the same kind of bitterness on the part of Kerry supporters or Democrats this time as there was last time, given that the president apparently has won the popular vote. And there's a huge margin in Ohio. It's almost 150,000 votes, and I understand what they're contesting there and all of that. But it's not like 500 votes, and Senator Kerry won the popular vote. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Right. I don't think there's the allegation that this was stolen out from under them the way some said in Florida. It won't stop them from being bitter. It won't stop them from mobilizing. You know, the re-election, the next election campaign starts about tomorrow.
Well, what happens now? What can we expect to happen this morning? It's 11 minutes till 7 o'clock in New York. So.
Well, first of all, and I heard Pat say this, I think we have half of something right, and I know Tom's going to come on later, I think, and he can explain this. I think we're going to call states as they fall.
You're going to take over December 2nd.
Yeah.
So you better be able to explain it now. We can't wait for Tom. Tom is out of it. I saw him staggering down the street. He looked like
He preceded me on the Today Show and explained this policy.
Okay. All right. But I mean, I just think you've got to be prepared to do this, don't you, Charles?
Let's not be.
I think you're prejudging.
Let's not be pushing the guy out here on
Mr.
Oligarchy
Williams.
Square.
No, I'm not trying to push him out. I'm just saying.
He's ready to demonstrate his
Dental
access.
Care Plaza, whatever we've named this thing.
No, it's a hypocrisy plaza, we call it.
Oligarchy Square is my favorite.
Hey, what were you going to say now?
Anywho,
before you tried to lay it off on Brokaw?
We're going to call states, but not call the presidency until we can make a decision here on Ohio. So that sounds pretty good.
Well, what is the president waiting for? Is he waiting for one of the news organizations to declare a state in his column, and then he's going to declare victory?
That becomes a great question, and I don't know which count they're going to make the official count of the White House, and do we get to print logos on our merchandise from now on, the official electoral count network of the Bush White House?
Yeah.
But that's a great question, and someone made the point last night that a concession, an acceptance, a victory does not hinge on a concession.
No, I understand that, but I'm still this great question I asked, but you're apparently refusing to answer.
I don't know what they're going to use as their official count.
What's the matter, Charles?
Well, how could you? What do you expect Mr. Williams to be in the mind
McClellan?
of the?
Not rate the questions, answer them. That's because we wanted. Well, what's the matter, Brian? We're in your camp here. Why are you?
I've had so much coffee, I could repaint Oligarchy Square right now.
Well, no, but I mean, I am wondering. When did they? What percentage of the votes in New Mexico? Is 100% in yet?
I don't know. I've been away from it for 90 minutes. I don't know.
What percentage of the votes in Bernard? Can you find this stuff out? What percentage of the votes in Nevada?
In Nevada, it's 99%.
99%. Right. Let's get it right and get it on the air.
Yeah, and what's in New Mexico? 99?
Yes.
And what's the spread?
I don't have that man right in front of me, but I'll get
Nevada,
it for you.
the spread is 20,000 votes in Nevada, for example. That's on the screen.
Yeah.
And New Mexico's coming up.
Oh, here we go.
There you go, 11,000 vote difference.
But as the godfather to my daughter, Josh Minkowitz, pointed out in great detail on the air all night, that New Mexico vote, you should live so long. I mean, a loaf of Wonder Bread has a longer shelf life than, this is unbelievable. Even the governor's saying it's going to take a few days.
Wow. And then I was trying to figure out what would constitute 1% of the vote in each of those states, and is that more than the disparity between the two candidates? Because if it's less, if it's actually fewer votes than the spread, then they could. This is really getting confusing.
You trying to kill me? What did I ever do?
No, I'm just trying to figure it out. So I just don't want to have to cough up 10 grand. That's all.
Let's talk about Tom
Even though it goes to
Daschle.
the ranch. So what about him? It's good. He's going. Don't you agree?
That's big. That margin when we got off the air was like 600-700 votes. Tom interviewed Senator-elect Thune, presumed Senator-elect Thune, as the giant killer of South Dakota. He tried and came close last time. GOP wanted Daschle so badly. And it looks like Senator Reid from Nevada is the presumptive new minority leader. He's been lining up for this vote in case it happened. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a movement to get your buddy, Mr. Dodd of Connecticut, someone who's vocal and willing to really take a sword and go at it for the next couple of years.
Well, before we characterize my relationship with Senator Dodd, I didn't know if he won or not.
Frequent guest on the broadcast.
Did he win?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then he
had a squeaker. He had one of those Schumer squeakers
Right.
last night.
It is 7 minutes till the hour. We're talking with Brian Williams here on the I'm Just Somebody program. Well, what I still don't understand is where can we get the answer to what it's going to take for the Bush administration or for the Bush people to declare that they've won New Mexico or Nevada or both?
The best way would have been to ask David Gregory between his second and third insults to you, I think, as I remember the last segment, to go to the press room when he gets back from his car, and I join you in wanting to know what he was doing going to his car.
With a senior Bush official.
Yeah. Is it something in the glove box? Is
That's
it
exactly
in the truck?
right. Bingo.
And I'm wondering. That's all I'm saying. Good
Okay.
guy, friend of mine.
Yes, I'm saying it. But that's a very
You've
legitimate
got a
question.
presidential election in the balance, and you're going to your Corolla, and he's in like a Camry or something.
Oh, absolutely. 6 minutes till the hour. On the I'm Just Somebody program. We're talking with Brian Williams, who's been up all night, but still hasn't lost his Jim Bunning fastball. And Jim won, didn't he, finally?
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah.
What?
I mean, give me a Mariano fastball, not Jim Bunning.
Well, he was a pretty good pitcher.
It's been years since he threw a good fastball.
Oh, I understand all that. So, and the Kerry people are going to do what? They're going to wait till 10 o'clock, did I hear?
Yeah, that's when the lid lifts. Kerry put a lid on, meaning no more press coverage all night, and they lift the lid at 10. We've been using 10 a.m., meaning that's when the clock starts and breakfast is served and the Denny's buffet opens. But that doesn't mean we're going to get a collective decision from the Kerry Brain Trust. I mean, they may not be through looking at the numbers or their chances. And, a half a night's sleep is better than none, and it gives you great judgment and great clarity sometimes.
How late, how long are you going to stay up?
I was just thinking about that. I've got 2 more Today Show hits this morning, and then our nightly news editorial meeting is at 9:30 a.m. Half of that staff is asleep on the 3rd floor.
He's going to go to his car.
You may want to watch tonight. This will be a good one.
Yeah.
And I don't know when we're going to go to sleep.
Well, so you can hang around a couple more minutes, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm yours. You own me for the meter's running, but you got me for 35 more minutes.
Okay.
If you want. Beautiful.
Brian Williams here on the I'm Just Somebody program on the radio, all over the country and on MSNBC. And, on the event you just got in your car, and they still don't know. NBC, I wonder if NBC regrets awarding Ohio to Bush. Do you know? You think you would know.
The anchor and managing editor of Nightly News will be here a couple segments from now. You can ask him. Tom explained all night long. Our director of elections, Sheldon Goweiser, is not a hasty guy.
So okay. So we're blaming it on Sheldon.
No, that we have many people working under it.
No, but Sheldon's the guy taking the fall, right? Okay. No, that's just I'm clear.
I don't see an Imus in the morning decision desk. We have.
Imus in the morning.
I'm Contessa Brewer, and I guess I don't think I'm supposed to read that.
Maybe.
This is WFAN in New York. An Infinity Broadcasting Station. We're part of Viacom, which is still selling for $36 a share. Thanks a lot. Anyway, we're on the radio all over the country and on MSNBC. Amy Robach and Charles McCoy are going to do some news. We'll talk more with Brian Williams and bring you up to speed on what potentially could be a mess, but probably won't be. Anyway, good morning, guys.
Good morning, I-Man. This morning, the president is expected to declare re-election victory, even though Senator Kerry refuses to concede in Ohio, and also obviously refuses, therefore, to concede the presidency as well. What? Why are you frowning at me?
Oh, I'm just listening. See how you slant the news.
NBC News has projected that President Bush will pick up the 20 electoral votes Ohio has to offer, but Kerry's running mate, Senator Edwards, said they're going to fight for every vote. Ohio is being contested right now because of tens of thousands of uncounted provisional ballots, 135,000 odd. In addition to Ohio, results are still too close to call in Wisconsin, with its 10 electoral votes, Iowa with 7, New Mexico and Nevada each having 5, New Hampshire also too close to call with its 4 electoral votes. The president took Florida relatively easily this time around, projected to pick up 27 electoral votes from the state, where the big recount and Supreme Court ruling put him into the presidency in 2000.
Yeah.
And it looks as though the money spent by Kerry campaigning in Pennsylvania, that was well placed.
This will actually be, if he's elected, this will be actually the first time he is actually elected, won't it? Wouldn't you agree with that, Charles?
Kerry is the projected winner in Pennsylvania, picking up 21 electoral votes. So right now, NBC has it. President Bush, 269 projected electoral votes. Senator Kerry's 221 with 270 necessary to claim victory.
And we can take a look now at some of the key Senate races. Democratic leader Tom Daschle is struggling right now for political survival in South Dakota up against Republican John Thune. That race right now still too close to call. In North Carolina, the seat formerly held by Senator John Edwards is now in the hands of the GOP. Republican Richard Burr defeated Democrat Erskine Bowles. Democrat Barack Obama easily defeated Republican Alan Keyes in Illinois to become the only African American in the Senate class of 2005 and only the 5th African American senator in U.S. history.
Are you hearing that, Harold Ford Jr.? My friend Harold Ford Jr.
Exactly. Right.
Oh, come on, brother. You got to get with it here.
Pennsylvania, incumbent Republican Senator Arlen Specter won re-election. He is now in line to chair the Judiciary Committee and preside over any Supreme Court nominations that reach the Senate in the next 2 years. As of now, NBC News is projecting a new Senate composition of 50 Republicans, 44 Democrats, 1 independent. 5 races right now still too close to call.
And the Republicans' decade-long hold on the House has been extended another 2 years. In Texas, Republican Pete Sessions beat Democratic Representative Martin Frost in the nation's most expensive congressional race, $8.4 million split between the candidates. In Kentucky's 4th, Republicans had high hopes for the open Democratic seat, and they got it, beating out Nick Clooney, the father of the actor George Clooney.
Would have been better off to run George, wouldn't he?
Of course it would.
He's a pretty cute guy.
No, absolutely. And in Illinois, longest-serving Republican House member Phil Crane was defeated. Crane had served in the House since 1969, so as of now, NBC News is projecting that the 435 seats in the House will break down this way: 231 Republicans, 203 Democrats, 1 independent, the first time since the early 30s that Republicans will have control of the House over a 12-year period. Officials say this election turnout could be the biggest since the Kennedy-Nixon race in 1960. More than 120 million people are expected to have voted yesterday, about 60% of eligible voters.
Well, how many voted in 1960?
I would have to get the figure for you, man.
Well, that can't be about.
It's according to the Associated Press this morning, dude.
Well, that's absurd. It's 25 years later. How could you have...
Perhaps they're comparing a population percentage of the population.
Thanks, Amy. Only one here with any brains, by the way. Holy God. Now, go ahead.
That's it.
Okay. It is coming up on 5 minutes after the hour. The Irish Morning Business Report is the gum out of my mouth. Sponsored by the, usually it just falls out.
Yeah. Just pleasant to see.
Well, whatever. Will be run by Alan Steinfeld. He's the president of the New York Roadrunners Club. And Greta Waits. Remember old Greta?
Oh, yeah.
9-time New York City Marathon champion to...
And an unfortunate accident. Right up the block, as a matter of fact.
I understand all that. No, come on.
On live TV.
No, come on. To promote this year's New York City Marathon, and all the New York City Marathon means to me is I live right across the street from the finish line, and we know what it means to me.
What?
You can't get to your apartment until 9 o'clock at night because they have 30,000 people in their underwear running up and down the streets. And and it doesn't make any difference. They won't let you in the whatever. It's like when they used to when we used to work at NBC and they put the Christmas tree up across the street over here, you couldn't park the limos in the plaza. It's absurd.
Very aggravating for the eye.
So you had 2 months where you had to try to find a place to park because a bunch of little starry-eyed dopes from Kansas wanted to come look at a tree. Get your own tree. The closing bell will be rung by Unical Corporation Chairman.
Does he need to be euthanized or what?
Oh no!
I'm actually serious. And CEO Charles Williamson has celebrated the company's 80th anniversary of listing. Unical Corporation trades under the ticker symbol UCL. You know, I was thinking about the New York Stock Exchange the other day, and John Thane, who is now in charge down there. What a remarkable. Well, actually, doesn't mean anything to me, but what a remarkable job this guy has done and what they've done. Some of the new initiatives they've initiated there at the New York Stock Exchange, and what a remarkable job Thane has done. And I was pleased to see that Katzenberg and those guys decided to go public or do their animation IPO with the New York Stock Exchange. So if you get to thinking about it, who else would they have done it with? They certainly want to. Well, you go on NASDAQ if you can't get on the New York Stock Exchange. Isn't that basically it, Charles?
Yeah, he said, and that's kind of a holding area until you can get on.
Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down 19 points. Is that kissing up to him enough, Mark? Down to 10. It's at 10.036. A NASDAQ composite, not that it makes any difference to anybody, closed up 5 at 1985.
Just if you're curious.
Yeah, the New York Stock Exchange composite closed up 2 points at 67.01. And this is really just, I know there's a lot going on, obviously, in the world with the country up in the air over this election. But we also have this trial going on in Delaware, the Disney trial, in which, just briefly, the shareholders have sued Disney, the board, for this sweetheart deal they gave Michael Ovitz, and they want the $140 million back, plus interest, which brings it to, over the past 7-8 years, up around $200 million. The New York Post reports that some board members apparently bypassed a lengthy headhunter search in order to give Ovitz a job, who was, by the way, Eisner's buddy and had been for 25 years. Back in 1995, Michael Eisner, of course, being the head of Disney, has been for about that long, 25 years. Testimony indicates that the board members followed the advice of Eisner, and 14 months later, Eisner decided that Ovitz was a psychopath and a liar, and would he just please go away?
This friendship is over.
He couldn't put him in a wood chipper, so he gave him $140 million and said, just please get out.
There is the door. Use it.
And so now Ovitz wants his reputation back, and the stockholders want their money. So who knows what's going to happen. Anyway, that's a business report sponsored by our friends at the New York Stock Exchange. It's 9 minutes after the hour. We're going to talk more with Brian Williams and then Tom Brokaw and Chris Matthews, who have both been up all night. So it'll be like in the old days. I just go to these AA meetings, just talking to 3 drunks, 9 minutes after the hour.
We are keeping our word, and we will fight for every vote. You deserve no less. Thank you.
on the I'm Morning program on the radio all over the country and on MSNBC. We're at Democracy Plaza, where NBC has been cranked up all night long trying to, preside over a resolution of this election, which has not been resolved yet. Brian Williams is with us and has been up all night and agreed to stay over. And also, please welcome to the program Chip Reed, our old friend Chip Reed. Good morning, Mr. Reed. How are you?
Great to be here, Don.
Chip, of course, didn't get the anchor slot. Brian did. And I meant there's some resentment and animosity between the two, and there should be, because frankly, we thought Chip should have gotten it, but he didn't. Anyway, how are you guys?
He's about the best-looking man in North America,
though, isn't he? You know what? Here's the thing I like about Chip. He's had the same. Do you have the same girlfriend?
I sure do.
Man, isn't that great? Remember, we met her years ago.
Yeah.
Well, of course, she's a pretty good item there, so.
Yeah, well,
yes, that's okay to say, right?
It was pretty obvious you felt that way the one time you met her.
No.
I was a little worried about it. I was worried about both of you.
I was a gentleman.
I'd heard that was an exam.
You both went to the restroom at the same time. I didn't know what was going on.
Anyway, where are we, Chip, here this morning?
Well, we're trying to figure out what's going on, I guess. Selfishly, I was denied what I wanted. I either wanted a Republican president and a Democratic Senate, or a Democratic president and a Republican Senate, because, when you've got them in the same parties and you're covering Congress, it gets a little, tedious sometimes. But I was hoping for some real political warfare up there. It looks like we're not going to get it. So,
in addition to other things, you're also an attorney. Is this going to come down to a David Boies deal or no?
I don't think so. It's not going to be like that. We're not going to see a long, drawn-out thing like that. It's theoretically possible that there could be enough provisional ballots or overseas ballots or something here. It's hard to imagine how you put it together, though. I'm not going to rule it out because, it's NBC's position that as long as they're challenging it, it is still in play. It's theoretically possible.
Well, are the Kerry people, Brian Williams also with us, are the Kerry people challenging it, or are they simply just insisting that all the votes be counted?
Well, they've said to the Secretary of State, don't you go certifying anything overnight. Right. We think something's wrong. Let's let all the votes be counted. You heard the Edwards speech. The difference between
what do they think is wrong?
They don't think that they know how many votes haven't been counted. Okay. They think that with all the uncounted, they expect to get the lion's share.
Right.
And the theme of their campaign.
Right. So every vote's going to count.
Yeah.
Well, had NBC not given Ohio to the president, would we be even having this discussion?
Chip, I told Don that a lot of these questions probably better put to Tom in just coming up really just in a few minutes.
We're going to have to defer.
Did any other network award Ohio to the president?
Fox did.
Oh, of course Fox did. Fox awarded it before the election.
What are you saying?
You know what I'm saying.
I mean, officially they did. Yes.
I see.
But I think ABC and CBS held out.
Yeah, well, I know CBS did because I went over to check to see what the nut was doing, but he had a wet dog in the road doing something. I don't know what it was.
You will find this hard to believe, but the guys on our decision desk, all the men and women around this thing are agnostics. They don't make calls looking up at any monitors. They are unaware of any pressures. That was one of the outgrowths of last time around, even though our folks never did that. So it's done in a vacuum. We were evidently the last to declare Florida last night,
right,
which I didn't know. But they did it when they were comfortable with their models.
So I understand where we are. Says President Bush is leading Senator Kerry in Ohio by how many votes?
You were in the newsroom.
140, something like that.
140,000.
And there could be somewhere in that vicinity.
And what percentage of the votes in? 99?
Oh, it's almost all of it, yeah.
What is? Now, how many provisional ballots are out?
Could be anywhere from 140 to 175,000, something like that. And what the Democrats like to cite is that provisional ballots in 2000 in Ohio, and there were provisional ballots in Ohio in 2000,
right,
something like 85 or 90 of them counted.
90% of them counted.
Yeah. But that's not going to happen this time around. That was a different kind of provisional ballot. That was a specific kind of state provisional ballot if you happen to move in the last 30 days before Election Day. So it's likely these are registered voters who just happen to move.
You're the first person to explain that, at least what I've heard.
It's not the same kind of provisional ballot. This kind of provisional ballot is expected to have a much lower return rate.
Okay, so Rudolph Giuliani said in the experience he had with provisional ballots that the percentage of ones that were declared eligible was somewhere in the 10% range.
And in Chicago, back in March, there was a primary, and it was 7%. Now that's extreme. I don't think it's going to be 7, but it could be 20 or 30 or 40, something.
Let's say, for the sake of this idiotic discussion, idiotic and the questions I'm asking are not that great, but let's just say that they're all declared eligible, that all of, which is obviously impossible, but let's just say they are. Then Senator Kerry is unlikely to get all those votes.
It's unlikely. It's theoretically possible.
So if you just...
There have been estimates that there could be as many as 250,000 provisional ballots. That's not going to happen.
No.
But there are now only 10 counties left, and there are about 135,000 provisional ballots in all the massive counties like Columbus and Cincinnati and Cuyahoga, which is Cleveland, have all
and then we still
in.
have the overseas ballots.
Overseas military, yep.
And those ballots to come in Ohio, and the speculation is the majority of those would probably go to President Bush.
The military ones would.
Right.
Yeah. The non-military would probably go to Kerry, but what I've heard is there aren't that many of those, of either.
Do you think that I should be wearing my hat or not?
It would serve to identify you as the star of the show, so these people out here would know who the important person is. Actually, that's what I was struck by walking up here. The number of groupies out there is extraordinary.
The only thing I would add is I meant to tell you they make that tie for men. Right over here at Saks, you can probably score one. Well, I guess this is over now, so we got some time now.
To go over and shop?
Yeah, I could take you. There's that men's store.
I bought this probably where you go at Mitchell's there in Westport.
I don't get up there much, Don. A little pricey. You know,
Aren't you?
don't make me go into detail, but, you know, I'm trying to raise 2 kids.
You're going to be the new anchor.
I have 2 cars. I got a mortgage payment. Come on.
Well, okay. We're talking with Brian Williams and Chip Reed. Well, so the next news is going to be what? Regarding Ohio?
Well, it's going to be the people in Ohio giving us the precise numbers and giving us a sense of whether this really is doable. And the next step may be Kerry. We just don't know.
Okay, when do they count the provisional ballots? Do they first have to determine if they're eligible and then count them? Well, what's that process?
It's a long process, and the Secretary of State's office insists that what they have to do under Ohio law, I don't think it's clear at all, but this is what they insist, that you have to wait 10 days and you don't begin counting them until the 11th day, between the 11th and the 15th day.
And remember, recounts are free if you come within 1%. But it goes on your visa if you want an official, and if you're not getting miles for that.
This is almost your best performance. Maybe you should stay up all night before you come on with us next time. This has been good. So
I hope you talk about where our country is this morning, because both sides hate each other.
No.
Yeah.
And there are only 4% of Americans in our poll who wouldn't mind if either guy was president. That's the lowest number in the modern history of polling. And I think that's where the national conversation is.
Well, it's a determination that I'm not going to be able to make. I mean, I'm a rare, I'm not a Democrat, but I'm a rare Kerry supporter in that I voted for him. He doesn't win. I would support President Bush. So.
You're a smart guy. You have smart guys on the show and opinion leaders. And that's what we got to start to get our arms around.
Well, I think Senator Kerry can do a lot to get that process started, you know. If you just do the math, I mean, I didn't make it through high school. I can do the math.
And what do you do if you're George W. Bush?
Yeah, it's up to both of them now to help bring this country together.
I would offer Senator Kerry the ambassadorship to France. That's the first thing I would do. So he doesn't feel like, there's anything to do. I guess he can go back to the Senate, but that's going to be embarrassing, right? What do you think?
And John Edwards?
Well, you want to keep him around because, if Barbara falls down.
Well, sure.
In a Walmart parking lot.
Absolutely.
Could be some big bucks there, right?
Automobile mishap somewhere, unfortunate, of course.
All right, you guys. Thank you both very much. Brian Williams, who takes over the anchor chair at NBC News on December 2nd, and will do just fine, by the way. And Chip Reed, always nice to see you. Thank you both very much.
us in the morning.
The hour here in the I'm Morning program on the radio all over the country and on MSNBC. I would, when we're here at Democracy Plaza at 30 Rock in Midtown Manhattan on 50th Street between 5th and 6th, and Brian Williams was just there. It was almost his best performance ever, wasn't it, Charles?
Terrific. It really was.
Because I think probably he's pretty buttoned up, you know, and he's going to take over for Brokaw on December 2nd. And so he doesn't want to blow that. So he's usually difficult to get loose. But he hadn't any sleep, so he just was willing to say anything.
Absolutely.
And he even got a chuckle when I dedicated Brown Sugar to William Cullen. So, and he and 4 other people got that one. Please welcome to the I'm Morning program, Tom Brokaw, who I saw walking down the street a little before 6 this morning.
There was a 140-foot black limousine coming down 49th Street. I thought P. Diddy was coming by to say vote or die.
And I rolled down the window and I said, "Hi, good job." And it was a great job. I watched you, and I watched you on MSNBC all night.
Thank you.
Until 3:30 this morning, I would do the picture-in-picture thing and watch Matthews and you. And you said, "What a nightmare." What did you want?
Well, it's a nightmare because we couldn't get a clean resolution of all this. Whoever wins or whoever loses. I think I said this here when I was here yesterday. We got to fix the system. I mean, you know, it's got to be so people feel that their vote is being counted. They know what the rules are about registration, where they go, and how they cast that ballot. And within a timely fashion, that vote is counted, and people have confidence in the accuracy of that count. This is the most important thing we do, is elect our president every 4 years. The most powerful office in the world. It's a reflection of who we are, not just politically, but culturally as well. And we have got this hodgepodge, carnival sideshow kind of operation going across the country. I just think it's wrong.
At around 2:30 this morning, you were coming back from a break, you know, where you pause and then you come back. And before you were talking to us, you said to somebody, "Are you getting nervous?" Who were you talking to?
I think I was probably talking to myself. I'm not sure. I think I was talking back to the desk in the decision desk, because we'd made the call on Ohio. I didn't realize, because part of the deal was this time that we wouldn't check I didn't know what the other networks were doing. Then I found out we were out there with just Fox. The others, ABC and CBS, had not called Ohio. So I just said, "Are you getting nervous about this?" And they said, "No, we're feeling very confident about it." And it holds up this morning. There you are in Ohio. George Bush continues to hold a lead there of 130-some thousand votes. So that's probably going to hold up all the way through. We've got 100% in, got the provisional ballots to count. In any other election, that would be called for George Bush by all the networks.
100% of the vote in Ohio for y'all that's on the radio around the country. And the president with 2,000,007 something. And Senator Kerry with 2.5 or whatever it is.
2.6.
2.6. And the Chris Matthews also with us. Good morning, Mr. Matthews. How are you?
Good morning, Don.
Very splendid job. I'm not just saying that because you're here, but both of you just an outstanding job. It's great coverage. And they're really fun to watch. And if I stayed up till 3:30, but I'm not tired as you guys are. But it was just great television. So,
thank you.
A little frustrating, wasn't it?
A little bit, yeah, but particularly if you voted for Senator Kerry, as I did. So, yes, it was a little frustrating. Because the exit polls, I heard you and Russert saying that the exit polls were telling you, in the afternoon, I guess.
They were distorted.
Were they?
Yeah, they were. They were too heavy for women. They were not heavy enough for Latinos. They were badly skewed in North Carolina, I think, weren't they, for not enough for white males in North Carolina.
Well,
they've got a whole take on them now. Yesterday, when we got the first wave, as it's called, our guys were saying these numbers are weird because the breakout, they had New Hampshire going so big for John Kerry at that point, and North Carolina in play for John Kerry, even South Carolina in play. So we didn't go on the air with any of that stuff. What we did was decide that we would count the vote, and when we were really confident of a state like Ohio, although that had me breathing a little bit shallow there for a while, we made the call based on what we were seeing in models and on the raw vote.
Well, what is the? First of all, are you guys sorry you called Ohio?
No.
Okay. And what is the president waiting for to declare victory for some network?
No.
To award him Nevada or New Mexico?
I think he was at one point. I mean,
he was waiting for Nevada so they could go over to the Reagan building and celebrate.
Somebody other than Sean Hannity to say you won it?
Yeah, I had email from the White House. We had email and calls from the White House during the course of the night saying, "Why aren't you all calling, Nevada and New Mexico?" And we were not going to get in that position as long as the Kerry people were contesting. Ohio is, I think, that they had every right to do. We wanted to let that play out because they felt that they could pull that back into their column. That's why they're doing that. And after what we went through 4 years ago, we were not going to get in a position where we were going to declare a winner and have to pull that back or something else would happen. So we just stopped declaring states after Ohio at 269.
So the president's ahead, just so I understand this, the president's ahead 130,000 or so votes in Ohio.
Yeah.
There are that many or more provisional ballots out.
This is what they don't know, Don, because I just got the word that there's a box on somewhere, 2900 block of Euclid Avenue in Cleveland, where they've got a box, and in the box are all these provisional ballots that have been cast, and nobody in the Kerry campaign knows how many ballots are in there. So they're not flying blind here right now, and they do, I think, talking to one guy this morning, know that the odds are against them, that they're going to have enough action there to turn things around.
But in the 2000 election, what percentage of the provisional ballots were ruled to be eligible?
Well, it depended state by state. Provisional ballots really are a result of what happened in the 2000 election. Some states had them. The standards have changed since then because of what happened in Florida, especially in 2000. States were then told under the Federal Help the Voter Act that you could have a provisional ballot. And that meant that a voter could come in and they'd say, well, look, you're not registered, we're not sure of your eligibility. And the voter could say, but I want to vote, so fill out the ballot, we'll set it off the side, and we'll determine your eligibility later. Part of the problem has been, then it was then left to the states about how they were going to interpret provisional ballots. We're in that checkerboard again, where secretaries of state are making different kinds of decisions around the country. In Iowa, the Attorney General said, if you're in the right county and the wrong precinct, it still counts. Republicans filed suit out there.
Well, Rudolph Giuliani told you, as you may remember, around 2:30 or so this morning.
Later than that, actually.
Whenever it was, 3 or whenever. That in his experience with provisional ballots, that only 8 to 10% of them could be authenticated. And so, but then the Secretary of State in Ohio said that in the 2000 election, 90% of those provisional ballots have been declared eligible.
Yeah, the standard has been changed a little bit since
That's
then.
what I understand. So Chip Reed was just in and said that it's a different provisional ballot this time. So,
see, that's what we've got to get sorted out. That's the point. Here we are trying to decide what's a provisional ballot in Ohio, what's a provisional ballot, and how can it be cast in Iowa, and this very, very uneven checkerboard terrain. It's getting to vote in America is like reading a life insurance policy. No one understands at the end of it, and their eyes are glazed over by it all. And I just think that that's wrong, and I think both parties feel that way as well.
And this is what Ken Blackwell, the Secretary of State of Ohio, calls a hiccup. He said this is just a little hiccup here, and he's at war with the Republican Party, from I can tell, in Ohio. So who knows where his politics are headed right now? That's Ken Blackwell. What a strange state.
Let's give the people in Iraq great confidence of their election coming up in January.
And maybe we can send over some monitors and learn something.
Chris, you actually are great at putting the whole thing in perspective, and it may be too soon for that to do a Douglas Brinkley deal or Doris Kearns Goodman. But what does it mean at this point this morning?
Well, I think it's one of those elections like you occasionally see in parliamentary countries. Well, they'll vote in, say, 51, and they'll vote again in 52, and it'll be the same result. There was no barriers broken down. I mean, the president did well. He did well. He got his base out. He got the evangelicals to vote enthusiastically. We were talking the other day. We had a briefing where it's 97% among the Republicans. What a party support that is. But he didn't convince the people in the Northeast, which it looks like it's another sweep in the Northeast. He didn't convince the people in California, the people who may think they're more sophisticated than he is. he didn't break through in that cultural world into the secular world. He's very much the dominant force, I must say, in the values world, though. This country's divided now between look at that map. That means a lot, that red and that blue. I was saying to somebody last night, who was on the show, Tucker Rescue, one of the Bush people, I said, if you were to go on a trip now, sort of a USO trip or a USIA trip, and took that map with you to India, or took that map with you to Australia or Turkey, and explained it to people, what does that mean? Is this a tribal difference here in our country? It really looks like one. Look at that contiguous mass for the president in the heartland, and yet in the big cities and on both coasts, he doesn't seem to enjoy any support. What's that about? It's not just about party registration. It's about secular versus religious. It's a whole values trip difference. It's really important, and I think we got to, at some point, find a way to unify, I think.
But it's one of the significance in this election is that the president actually won the popular vote.
Yeah, by a big margin.
By 3.5 million votes.
Yeah.
So people like, I don't know, may won't have that to scream about.
And that won't help Kerry's situation if he goes to litigation, because he won't have that moral foundation that Al Gore could have exploited his popular vote.
Say if you bet somebody $10,000 that Senator Kerry was going to win, like you were stupid enough to do that, when would you think you would have to pay off that bet?
When would you have to write the check?
When would you have to write the check for that?
Well, this is just a guess on my part, but in your younger days, you probably had a fair amount of experience with hot checks. Why not just go back to that?
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I see you been up all night, didn't take the edge off, did it? We're talking with Tom Brokaw and Chris Matthews about, well, I guess, is it a mess?
I'll tell you what, Chris is absolutely right about how the country is broken out here. And from a political point of view, the Democrats have got a big problem. They're not going to be a national party until they can get back into the Great Plains and the Rocky Mountain West to some degree, into the South, and make a stand there, because they're not even close in those states. I mean, George Bush is winning by 2-1 and 3-1 in some of those states, and they're thought of in a disdainful way as Democrats. They've been demonized in part by the other party, but they've also been their worst enemies. As I've gone around the country in this election year, I've talked to a lot of evangelical Christians, thoughtful people, have strong values, care about their families. They should have an economic connection to the Democratic Party, but they feel mocked by that party. They don't think the party takes them seriously or their values seriously, and they don't know what they're so worked up about when it comes to language and entertainment and other parts of the culture. And that's a real challenge for the Democratic Party. This reminds me of Republicans back in 1964.
Well, it's flyover country to a lot of Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean, think of the guys who contribute to the Democratic Party. I mean, they live in LA, they live in New York, they might live in Florida. They don't live in Missouri. They don't live in West Virginia. And by the way, this will sound a little bit odd, but suppose you were living in West Virginia and a guy that looked like John Kerry walked down the street. I mean, everybody would notice, who's the dude in town? It's like a cowboy movie. Who's that guy? He seems different than us. He's dressed different. He seems different.
What's the split in California?
Just not much you can do about that.
What's the popular vote split in California?
Probably 55-45.
I didn't see it this morning. It was. But by the way, what struck me this last night, God knows what time of night it was, we're all waiting to see how the South is going to go, and we know how it's going to go. But you see how quick Missouri came in and how quick West Virginia came in? Yeah. It wasn't even an issue. This guy was an outsider to them.
But I understand, Chris, you're talking about the support the president enjoys in California and New York. But it's not like everybody in California voted for Senator Kerry, or not everybody in New York voted for Senator Kerry. So, I mean, if it's a 55...
The president never tried to carry California.
No, I understand it, but
the
it's a 55...
largest state, and the president didn't try to carry it.
It's a 55-45 split. That's not...
Well, why didn't he campaign there? And I think one problem with the Electoral College is it encourages this stuff.
Why
because
would you be badgering me?
we should
What'd
have,
I do?
because we should have, if candidates had to compete for numbers, they'd both be going to Brooklyn, they'd both be going to Queens.
I'm being nice to both of you this morning because I know you're tired, so I'm not trying to jerk your chain or get you to say something that will ruin your career. So, well, yours is over. So
why would you change now?
You know,
when they're at their most vulnerable,
Right.
you would be taking it.
Daschle lost. Is that fun?
Yeah.
No. Oh, he did.
Yeah.
You're saying yeah. You say no.
I'm saying yeah.
Oh, okay.
It hasn't been called yet, but I guess we stopped calling. But
but he did lose, and Thune is going to win there. He ran a very strong campaign at the end. I think Tom Daschle has been an excellent senator from South Dakota. He's delivered a lot there. He's a great retail politician. But John Thune was a strong candidate. Former basketball star, ran strongly against Tim Johnson.
Yeah.
And came back this time. And Tom Daschle and his wife filed for the homestead exemption in the state of, or in the District of Columbia, which meant that they have to say we're residents of D.C. And in South Dakota, that doesn't go over.
You know, it worked really well for Thune. I don't know him very well, but I saw how he lost the last time. And you know, show me a good loser, you got a loser. But in this case, he didn't contest the fight with Tim Johnson. All the stuff about the Indian tribes and the way the voting went that day on Election Day to get out the vote thing, where you had Democratic headquarters in the same buildings as the voting booths. And like a gentleman, he said, I lost, and he took it. And then, of course, the president talked him into running. Out in that, you're from out there, Tom. Everybody knows everybody. And they said this guy was a gent. And he didn't turn anybody off.
How long does Kerry keep the Bruce Springsteen guitar pick?
I don't think Bruce is going to go back and retrieve it from him.
Yeah, but I mean, as superstitious as Senator Kerry is, when does he throw that out the limo or whatever?
the warped old one, right.
When does the barn coat go? The vanilla barn jacket. When's that baby going?
It is 1:15 here on the IMS Morning Program. Tom Brokaw and Chris Matthews, thank you both. Well, final question, when will this be resolved?
Well, it's hard to know. It depends on the Kerry campaign, what the decision that they make. Mid-morning today, the White House has stepped back and said we want them to reflect on it. As they look at that 136,000 vote margin, they're going to have to think hard about whether they want to go out and make a legal issue about that, especially as you were saying just a few moments ago with the president's national popular vote lead over John Kerry.
Which is a record, by the way. Broke Ronald Reagan's popular vote in 84. All-time
about
high.
113 million people voted this time. It's not as high as some Democrats had thought it would be, and they thought that was going to be their key to victory, but it was higher than Republicans. Karl Rove thought it would be, the over-under would be at about 110. But the interesting thing is, Bernie, of those additional votes, what they did was register a lot of people who come into the system as young Reagan conservatives. Ronald Reagan is the godfather of this generation. He has created a new political landscape in this country, and after he's gone, not just politically but physically, there's a legacy about Ronald Reagan that a lot of Republican politicians are able to take advantage of.
Still mourning in America, baby.
I know, Tom, you're not actually retiring, and I don't want to embarrass you, and I don't intend to embarrass you. But millions of Americans, and I'm among them, agree you are the greatest newsman and anchorman in our lifetime, and that includes Walter Cronkite and David Brinkley and all of these people.
Well, that's too generous.
And you're a better person, and you're a great American, and your contribution with the greatest generation books will go down in history. So good luck and God bless you. You've been wonderful.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me, Don. It really does.
Tom Brokaw and Chris Matthews, who, well, he's not the greatest.
Hey, thanks for having me on with this guy.
You're quite welcome. Chris Matthews and Tom Brokaw, thank you both very much. 13 till the hour.
In the morning.
Seven minutes till the hour here in the IMS Morning Program on the radio all over the country and on MSNBC. We're at Democracy Plaza here with Tim Russert, the Washington Bureau Chief of NBC News, the host of Meet the Press, and I watched him all night till 3:30 this morning, and nothing happened. So, or it was a mess. And Howard Feynman's here as well. We're going to talk to Tim first. First of all, good morning, Mr. Russert.
Nice to see you, Mr. Imus. Good to be with you.
Great job you guys did. I really mean that.
Thank you.
It was fascinating television. Are you sorry you called Ohio?
It was an amazing night. I don't know. You know, the decision desk, that's what they get paid for. It looks like it's going to hold. It looks like about 135,000 lead. The important thing is that the Kerry campaign has every right to figure out what they want to do. And when they look at this...
Well, what we're going to do is count the votes. You don't mind that, do you? You people at NBC News, you don't mind if we count the votes, do you?
What they're going to do, what?
We're going to count the votes.
Which votes?
The whatever votes are available, we're going to count them.
My hunch is that Senator Kerry has great dignity. He'll see that today would be a good day if he wanted to gracefully step out and say, you know, I want to congratulate the president, move on. But he has every right to say, I want to see those provisional votes. I want to see the whole thing counted and take the next 10 or 11 days. But people close to the campaign tell me that with 135,000 margin, that's pretty tough.
Well, I literally watched you and Brokaw all night long till 3:30 this morning. And I could feel you watching us. And I heard you guys say, by the way, that the exit polls told you that it was going to be completely different. And you both acted like you were angry about the exit polls, one. But two, I got a sense, and maybe it's just, who knows, but I got a sense you were sorry you called it.
Sorry to call it? No. You know, we didn't call a couple other ones that are still too close to call. The key to last night, I think, in trying to explain what happened, we had been talking about turnout all along, and we had said Ohio, which turned out to be the case. But when we talked about turnout, it was all about new registrants and young voters. And the fact is, when John Kerry stood up and said, this is the most important election of our lifetime, not only did young people who oppose the war say, right, people who live in rural Ohio and people who are evangelical Christians said, yeah, you're right, and we'll see at the polls. I mean, it was extraordinary that George Bush was not only able to get his base out, but he was able to expand his base to the level he did. And it's really, if you think when a Democratic candidate has the war in Iraq, has a sluggish economy in many parts of the country, and people say the most important issue to them, moral values, tax cuts, and the war on terror, it's a real credit to the kind of campaign the president was able to frame.
4 minutes till the hour. We'll be back with Tim Russert and Howard Fineman in a couple of minutes.
Imus in the morning.
Infinity Broadcasting radio station, part of the Viacom deal. We're live from Democracy Plaza on the radio all over the country and on MSNBC, though we're not on the radio network at this point. We are on MSNBC. Tim Russert is here, and he was up all night with Tom Brokaw and Howard Fineman, who as well, who's been up all night as well, waiting to figure out what to write for Newsweek, right?
Yeah, it's a nightmare. I mean, we have 5 or 6 different covers mocked up. I early in the night wrote a Kerry wins version, and then I wrote the Bush wins version, and now I'm writing Oh No Not Again version. And we have a special issue of the magazine that we hope to get out and close by noon today. I don't know if we're going to be able to, because even though John Kerry may decide to get out, we're not sure when he's going to do it. And if he doesn't decide to get out and follow the procedures in Ohio, we're looking at 10, 11, 12, 15 days, theoretically.
Yeah, I was interviewed for Time magazine for their special
I knew this was
issue.
coming, right.
What?
Go ahead.
Well, no, I wasn't interviewed for Newsweek. Can I relate what happened?
Yes.
I was interviewed for Time for their special edition, and I had a pithy little humorous quote that Charles and I kind of collaborated on.
Yes.
And I'm just hoping it gets in. So,
well, I'm hoping it gets in too.
Tim Russert, what's the matter?
I just noticing your tie.
What's the matter with it?
That is troubling. I agree.
What's the matter with the Mai Tai?
Everything.
I got this at Mitchell's. It's an Hermes tie.
We say you got it from the New Jersey governor's
You
mansion.
showed up in one of the exit poll questions.
Why?
Hey, wait a minute. I thought you guaranteed John Kerry victory.
Oh, my God.
And you also guaranteed a New York Yankee victory.
Well,
he did
no,
not.
I didn't guarantee the Yankee victory.
Give me a warning for the next one, will you?
Honestly.
I did guarantee. I guaranteed a Kerry victory, and I bet $10,000 that he would win. And apparently, we don't know yet, do we? Or did we do know? Don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Why should he concede, though? I'm being serious now. At this point.
Well, he doesn't have to. I really believe that.
No, he doesn't have to. But there are people suggesting. You just did a couple minutes ago.
No, I think the table's been set for him. I think his staff actually handled this quite well by saying, we want to go to bed, sleep the night, see how it all looks in the morning, and it gives him an opportunity by sending Senator Edwards out there to address the crowd. He now, as the presidential candidate, can come forward and say, I've thought about this a lot. I want to thank all my people, but I think it's in the best interest of the country we come together now. Yeah. It's a very magnanimous thing, and it's something that, for example, John Thune, the new senator from South Dakota, did this 2 years ago when he lost to Tim Johnson. He could have contested some of the voting in the Indian reservations, and instead he said, no, it's not worth putting the state and the people of South Dakota through it, and he skyrocketed in the polls. Right. Al Gore, when he withdrew after the Supreme Court decision, probably the finest speech of his campaign. But I don't think anyone would fault Senator Kerry if he came out today and said, you know what, I've gone through these votes very carefully. I want every provisional vote counted. I want to see that in black and white. And if it takes 11 days, it's worth it. This is the most important position in the world. The Republicans would be upset, but I think the American people would say, all right, I understand.
Well, now do the math again for me in Ohio. There's 130. The president's ahead by 130,000 votes?
135,000 votes, the president's ahead.
How many provisional ballots are there, do they estimate?
Well, they estimate about 175,000.
How many of those will be eligible?
Well, that's the key question. The Republicans say in Illinois it was anywhere between 7 and 25%. Right. Ohio seems to have a little better record than that. But also included in a recount of that nature, or a first count, would be absentee military ballots from overseas, and there's 5,000 or 10,000 of those. The Kerry people will privately admit it's very hard to see where they can find 135,000 votes. What they were saying last night is they thought more votes would come in from Cuyahoga County, raw votes, right, and the margin of victory would be around 50,000, and they really wanted to contest that. And we'll see what they do today.
Yeah, one of the things that happened is that the numbers went the other way, that the margin for Bush increased rather than decreased, and some of the tough talk from the Kerry camp happened before that changed.
Well, it's mathematically impossible for him to win.
It's very hard. He also wanted to wait and see how the other states went, because as long as it was possible for him to reach 270 electoral votes, and it looks like he will win Wisconsin, Minnesota, and New Hampshire, which would give him 252. And if he won Ohio, it would be 272.
Well, who's the president waiting? Who are they? Who's the Bush campaign? Who are they waiting to tell them that they won either Nevada or New Mexico?
Well, they wanted the television networks to project.
They wanted you to tell them, didn't they?
Well,
like you did Ohio.
NBC, Fox, CBS, or ABC, sure. Yeah, that would give them the imperator of...
I went over to check what that psychopath Rather was doing last night, just to see if he was waving the pom-poms like he was for Gore back in 2000, which is what soured me on him. He was more measured this time. I only watched for a couple minutes, but he was talking about how brilliant Karl Rove was and had some wet dog out in the road and a beer can or whatever the metaphor was that he drew. But and I came back to you guys, and here we are. Well, what do you predict will happen, Russert? You're supposed to know this stuff.
What I predict will happen? I said Ohio, which was a lot closer than your New York Yankee or John Kerry prediction.
No. I didn't. What? I didn't predict the Yankees.
You did too.
Did I?
Yes, you did. You were pretty definitive, but not as definitive as you were on a Kerry win. Right. Nothing close.
Well, I thought.
Or as definitive you were 2 weeks ago on the Bush win.
See, here's the difference. That'll be fine. Here's the difference between me and most Kerry supporters. As I voted for Senator Kerry. I like him a lot. I wish he were president. He's not going to be. I'll support President Bush. He'll be my president. Not one of those people who's going to be mad for 4 years, like a bunch of these other panty-wearing liberals.
Now let's start this right now, and then I'll turn it over to Howard because he has to run. But what you have now, if George Bush is reelected, is 2 open primaries.
Where's Howard going?
One in the Democrat. He has to go to the Today Show.
Oh, well, whoopee. Oh, you want to talk to the 75-plus demographic?
They're just right across the plaza.
You have a Republican primary and a Democratic primary.
Right.
You have Hillary Clinton, John Edwards, Howard Dean. You have Rudy Giuliani, John McCain, Bill Frist. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
And it starts
Now.
today.
Right. 10 a.m. Eastern.
Just get that board. Get your board out already. You know.
What do you think will happen, Howard?
I think that Kerry will pack it in because partly it's because of the Ohio law. If he decides to, he's got to then stick for 10, 11, 12, 15 days. The pressure on him during that time would just be absolutely enormous. If they could get the recount of the provisional ballots right away, get it in a day or so, that would be different. And when Edwards came out last night and said, at least we can wait one more day, I thought that was very significant. He was not saying we're going to go the whole distance here.
Had they won the popular vote as Gore did, but they're down in the popular vote, the national popular vote, by 3.5 million votes, so they don't have that to go on.
And I think that was really impressive. I think that's the highest number. I think Bernie was mentioning is the highest vote total that any president has gotten. It was a big vote. The registration turnout was pretty good. It wasn't the colossal 114, 118 million some were saying, but it was good and it was impressive. And to win an absolute majority in this country in the popular vote anymore is quite an achievement. The last president to do it was George H.W. Bush in 1988.
Why, if in fact he doesn't, apparently has, why did Senator Kerry lose?
Well, Senator Kerry lost, as Chris was saying in the last hour, because he just did not sell in red state America. George Bush understands blue state America because George Bush is from blue state America. He went to Yale. He went to Harvard Business School. He knows something about the other side. Other than his brief tour of duty in Vietnam, John Kerry doesn't know anything about red state America. And every time he went there, he betrayed it, whether he was talking about Lambert Field, where the Packers play in Wisconsin, or who amongst us does not love NASCAR, whatever else he said and indicated, it was clear he didn't know anything about the red states of the country.
Well, you're an awful person. Here you are, my guy's down, and now you're kicking him. Do you hear this, Charles?
I'm here. He has many other great qualities.
No wonder people hate you people at Newsweek and Time and all these networks.
Snarky is the word, I guess.
Anyway, say hi to all of our friends over at the Today Show.
And
give me an extra set of Depends if you can. That's one of their big sponsors over there. Howard Feynman here on the I'm Morning program from Newsweek. It is 9 minutes after the hour. Tim Russert is here. And, well, you really look like you've been at the American Legion with Big Russ like it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you're ready to hear another Charlie Pride song. I mean, you're a mess.
It takes one to know one, doesn't it?
Well, I've been there.
I think he wanted to take a nap in that bed that's back there.
Is that your bed?
Is that your bed back there?
Well, I didn't know there was a bed.
There's a cot out there with makeup all over it.
No, I'm fine. It's the first time I've ever stayed up all night without drugs, but I'm proud to acknowledge here. 10 minutes after the hour, we'll be back with Tim Russert in just a couple of minutes. Thanks.
Because we cut taxes on everybody. Remember, we ran up the child credit by 1,000. We reduced the marriage penalty. We created the 10% bracket. Everybody who pays taxes got relief. The recession was one of the shortest in our nation's
in the morning.